Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We are back to a fifth episode of what we now call the Rainmaker Runway podcast, featuring your pilot, yours truly, and my co pilot, very trusty man over there, Joel, aka Draftmaster Flex. We are cruising at altitude. I am in shambles on the floor. My plane is in turmoil, in turbulence. I had a lot of turbulence on vacation. Never managed to get any Rainmaker lineups put in after I've been preaching Mexico Open to you, Joel. But I'm assuming you had a decent-ish week with us. We'll get chatting to that too. How the hell are you?
I'm good. So I think Mexico was super interesting to reflect on based on what we've been preaching for the last, 6 to 8 weeks, because a lot of what we were preaching came to fruition. I went all in on a strategy. I made some money. I'm not going to complain. I didn't do as well as I would have liked, but I netted $350. So $350 more than I had before the Mexico. I'll take it. I missed on I literally played two lineups with pretty loaded, almost optimal with one player different in both.
Okay.
And I basically missed on the one different player on both in each one. And that's still won $350, right? You gotta be pretty perfect doing these tournaments. But I think if I did it all over again, I'd probably go a similar route. Like I was close, I was there, I didn't quite make the right picks, but I do feel good about the formula that I'm using, the approach that we're going after. And like I with all DFS and sports and everything that we're doing, if you expect to win every week, you're going to have a very miserable year, right? You can't expect to win every week. You just got to feel good about your process, feel good about how you're trending, and then expecting one of those weeks is going to pop.
Exactly. I think that's exactly what you want to say. It's you just kind of hoping to min cash kind of thing, just get a few bucks in the door each tournament, potentially not, like that happens if you're playing it the right way sometimes. If you're going heavy on lineups with very core pillar plays, you're going to miss out. But at the end of the day, you're going to be waiting for those one or two big weeks. And those are what kind of spur you on. I had one at the Masters, kind of did not have one last week because I had Tony Finau and John Rahm sitting idle on the runway. They did not get away from the gate. I was on vacation. I landed in Las Vegas at 9 o'clock at night and woke up 7 o'clock in the morning on Vegas time and realized, you know what? I haven't put a one and done in. I haven't submitted my DFS lineups. I haven't done any fantasy lineups. I haven't done any Rainmaker lineups. So it was a disaster for me. And Johnny Vegas, out of all people, while I was in Vegas, decided that he was going to be injured. So I've got a few Johnny Vegas shares that have halved in price, but luckily they were only $13 a pop. So nothing too crazy, but it's my first real injury turbulent moment, that I've had with some things here. So what is Sweet Spot DFS saying? Here to learn. I won 30 on Rainmakers last week. First time playing and put in 30 on different 50-cent $4 cards. I lost track of that giant long sentence towards the end there, but
So I
50
think
cent $4 cards.
His cards range between 50 cents and $4, accumulating to 30.
Okay. It's like the math isn't adding up for me there, but it's okay. Yeah, I'm going to take these off because I think my IQ is diminished when I'm wearing sunglasses on the screen. I need to see my own eyes in order to do this thing. So, well, Sweet Spot, my man Eric, I'm happy that you're making some cash because this is what Rainmaker is all about, my friend. We're doing some good things. So, I forgot to delist Tony. I tried to sell a few Tony Finau's last week. No one was buying on them. So this is something I've learned, Joel, is I think it's beneficial to have a low edition count card, but it's difficult to sell it in a pinch. If you're trying to get the value back for what you bought it for, I think a lot of people that are buying in the market typically want to just buy the cheapest cards. And I think having a 24 out of 240 Tony Finau turned out to be a bit of a mistake on my part from a short-term aspect. I think if you're going to buy a low edition count card, you're going to want to use that for the whole season, basically, unless you really find a good opportunity to sell it. That being said, it sold today. So I'm having one of those weeks where I can't do anything right. But Tony Finau, one of them, is no longer in my player pool. He sold for what I tried to get for him last week, which is fine. I don't know if he's going to win another tournament. There was a small tournament last week, and I'm not sure he'll be doing that again. So
Well,
Yep.
I will say, so as I've said before, I normally put very little weight on the card count. I think it's very rare to get duplicates. I did think that would be a possibility this week because I figured everyone was, going to have similar lineups optimizing Rom, Finau. I was playing Wyndham, Clark, and Woodland in multiple lineups. So those were your heavy four favorites.
Mm.
And so because I figured there would be other people doing that, I did try to get I only bought like 4 cards last week, but I tried to get the lowest tier edition count just in case there was a tie. But the way I did it was I didn't go for the lowest I could find. I went for the lowest closest to the lowest price, right? So like, if the lowest price on a card, let's just hypothetically say was $50 and the edition count was let's say 150. If I could buy a card for $56 and be edition count 40, it was worth the extra $6 to go down, but I wasn't going to spend an extra $30. So I was just looking at, is there something close enough within $5 or $10 that I can get me a nice edge? And that's where I went for. It didn't matter. Like I said, at the end of the day, I probably didn't need to do it. But that's what I did. And you're right. I expect to probably lose a little bit of value in that, but because I only fluctuated $5, $6 here, it didn't make a big difference. But when I go to sell them now, yeah, I'm probably not going to get max value. But that's how like you said it right. Like, unless a tournament like this comes up again, I don't think people are going to be shopping for the tier. So you have to assume the value of your card is what the lowest price of that card is currently on the market.
Yeah. Yeah. I think at the end of the day, that's the situation. And I think you just proved you were the buyer and I was the seller, and you didn't want to go up to what I was wanting to get, So it's tough, it's tricky, but I think if you want to use that card in the long run, it's okay. Like if you're going to spend up a little bit, that's fine. And also something I'm coming to terms with is the fact that I took the average of what each card's price from week to week, because I've been, recording outside of the Mexico, so I've got a 2-week gap, but outside of each week, the average card's price has decreased by $2 or so. So the price of the average card has been going down week over week, which makes sense. The more cards are coming into play, the closer you get to the end of the season, these cards are starting to lose value. So I think that's also one thing, like actually breaking even on a card after you've used it for a while. It's also not the worst thing in the world because these cards are diminishing in value.
And like for someone like me, I went out and bought who I wanted. And I went out and bought a lot of cards. And I bought them under the thought process of these are rentals and I'm going to get value back. I see that the values of them are going down. Like, I'm not going to get back what I bought some of these for a month ago or 2 months ago anymore. Like those days are gone. But I can still get back 80% or 85%, which would be fine for me because I've already had a big hit this year. So that would make up all of my money. But like you said, the longer I wait, the lower that percentage is going to be. If I wait another 2 months, that's going to probably be like 65%, 60, not 80. So I'm trying to find that sweet spot now of when I'm going to start selling and when I'm going to start, getting off some cards. And I'm not going to sell everything because I'm going to play through the end of the year, but I don't want to hold as big of a roster that I hold now. So now I'm being strategic about, okay, like we're not quite at midseason yet, but I would probably say another month we're midseason. So that's when I'm probably going to start getting a little more aggressive in selling.
Yeah, I think especially through the major season, I think people will be playing majors a bit more. They want these major cards, blah, blah, blah. Before I get to Sweet Spot DFS's question here, I have to mention that this show is brought to you by rotoballer.com, folks. We are 9 minutes in, and I almost forgot the aerostess had to nudge me in the ribs to tell you that rotoballer.com is the place to be. Use code MANIAC for 10% off anything premium that you'd like to get your hands on there. We've got weekly and annual subscriptions. Tee Off Sports, my main man Spencer, we are met in Vegas, part of Joel's Fantasy Draftcast crew. Spencer is the man, dude. I loved hanging out with him, and he's the man when it comes to betting, too. He is fantastic at his job. He's constantly grinding out units for you each week, week in, week out. So go check rotoballer.com right now for 10% off. Use code MANIAC. And then Sweet Spot DFS asks, it's a good question because what is the tax for a lower edition card? Like how much more is a top 50 card versus a 100+ card? And I think you asking a good question, and I don't think it's necessarily top 50. It's more like a top 10, top 5 is where you start to see a severe tax on those cards. I believe, Joel. What do you think? I think, like you can see cards are pretty close to each other within, and it also depends like what edition count. I think with a in the core market where there's thousands of cards, it's a bit of a different situation. So maybe the 50 to 100 is a bit more applicable. And I think that's what Sweet Spot's playing. In the rare situation, I feel like it's more like a top 20 type situation. And then when it comes to elite, you're most likely looking at like a top 5. What I mean, you can probably speak to a little bit of the elite side of things there. I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, maybe even top 10, but for the most part, it's just less applicable with elite because there's just less total cards. So
Yeah.
the likelihood of having a duplicate is just much smaller. Again, like I said earlier, the highest likelihood is a tournament like this where, I felt like there were a handful of guys who were heavy favorites, and so I felt like a lot of people were going to try to build a similar build. It didn't end up being an issue. So
yeah,
I went for the lower edition counts for that reason. I didn't need to. For a tournament like this week and for these bigger majors, I don't think there's going to be ties. There's so many guys that'll be in the mix that I don't think you need to worry about it. In terms of the tax, I don't think there's going to be a consistent answer in terms of this is what the number is, right? It really depends on 1, the tier you're playing, 2, the card, 3, the week. Like I thought this week of all weeks was the week where you probably could have charged a bigger premium for it. Like next week, I don't think people are shopping for the lower edition tiers for the Wells Fargo. I think there's plenty of guys to go play. So I think for next week, I wouldn't even pay. Just go get the card you want, the cheapest one. And like the way I did it, like I was saying before, is if you do want to be safe in the lowest edition tier, give yourself a $5 or $10, buffer. And then if you can get down, if the cheapest card is edition 250 and for $5 more, you can get number 40, then maybe do that. But other than that, I wouldn't look to spend too much more.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think what we've mentioned, I'll just repeat it one more time, is elevated versus non-elevated events. You're going to find in non-elevated events like the Byron Nelson, maybe there'll be a few, like a handful, like Scotty Scheffler, I believe he's teeing it up at the Byron Nelson. So if you got like 3 or 4 elite dudes in a field versus everybody else, those cards are going to be duplicated in lineups, like we've discussed already at the Mexico with Rahm and Finau. So that's kind of where you want that tax to. You're going to be more cognizant of those taxes there. Outside of that, like I said, I think I've come to the realization that I'm going to stop hunting for those really expensive high edition count cards. And if I do, I'm going to probably hold on to them until the end of the year, because I think that's, again, another instance where those cards will have value in a 30-man field, which is the Tour Championship. So I don't know, either you play them all and just play it till the end of the year, or you try and sell them. It's a gamble, and it's a risk and a decision you have to make, which it's something we're learning as we go along the way.
And the other big gamble you could take in this is you can roll the dice and see if there's another tournament like Mexico where there's like a handful of guys that are the heavy favorites, but you don't know which handful that will be. But I guess if you hold on and wait for that, then you would get that value back that week. Yeah. That's a hard game to try and play.
It is. So some tips that I have, because I bought Gary Woodlands for $13 a pop, 3 of them, and I sold all 3 of them before the tournament for $33. So that is what I did make $60 then, I guess, last week. Just selling Gary Woodlands. So
let's go back. Let's just touch on that for a minute, because that's such an important thing about this game, is that it's not just about the actual competition on the weekend. Right, it's about buying value, selling value, understanding the market. Like you said, the reality of you, even if you played all your cards, making $60 would have been a good week, right? Like just playing, that would have been like, yeah, I won $60. You making $60 selling Gary Woodland is a good week. That counts. That is absolutely a smart way of playing.
I'm starting to feel better about my week that I had, Joel.
Yeah, no, it is. Like at the end of the day, like. When you would you win the other week? You won like $50, and you were like, "Yeah, I had a good week. I won $50." So you won $60 selling Woodland. Like that counts. That's totally the same profit. So I think it's important to look at. There was a thought process I had last week between playing, which I didn't want to sell my ROM, so I decided to play, because if I have ROM, you might as well go for it. And because I played, I was like, well, I do also have Finaus and Clarks, which I'm going to get max value for right now, selling before the tournament. So I consider just going the other way and trying to get max value on my Finau and Clark and not going for it. But I figured with ROM on my roster, it was worth building the best lineup possible.
That's the thing, dude, is because if you have too many of one guy and then not enough of the other, you can't make an optimal lineup either. So maybe that's when you either need to go get another dude or sell to kind of get that nice balance going there. And before we move on to, the Wells Fargo Championship, one more thing that I do in order to find the value in these cards is go follow these Twitter accounts of these events. They will tell you if someone has committed well in advance. And that's what I did with Gary Woodland. That's what I did with, Johnny Vegas and John Rahm and Tony Finau, is you see these guys commit early on, and then you can go and grab them, use them in the upcoming events, and then the week of you can kind of just ditch them and then make your profit on them and move on. Because I think Gary was, I think that was a good sell because he only finished like 30th or whatever, like 35th. So in my opinion, I felt like I was, we salvaged something last week. So that's what we got going on there. Before we get on, I can already tell in the lower tiers of contests that contest selection seems to be even more important than DFS. Agree or disagree, Joel? It's weird because you've only got one single entry that you can really get into. So I'm not entirely sure what that question's really getting at, because the contest selection is so limited. You've only got your 3 entries to the bankroll builder, and then your 1 entry into the single entry, which is a very fair contest, I would say, because obviously you put your ace lineup into the single entry, right? And then all the other high upside lineups you want to put into the 150 max.
I'm actually going to agree with that. I do think that while you're right, there's limited contests. That is true. However, how you build your lineup, right? Like, you do get to a point where like you have your premier lineup that you want to put out there, sure. Where you play that, right? And for me, that's not the same week to week, right? If I think I have like a lineup that I think is really competitive, I might put that in the 150 max, the biggest one. And if I have one that I like, but maybe not like not super confident in, then I go to the single entry, right? Because you just want to win. But like I do sometimes opt to go for the bigger one because I do think I have as good a lineup as anybody, and so I'm going to go for the biggest prize. Because what I don't want to happen for me, and maybe it's not the best mentality, but I don't want to have the lineup that would have won the big contest not in the big contest. So
okay,
I have a lineup that I'm going for it.
See, I think it's fine because I think you definitely shoot for a lot more upside than I do in general. So I guess it's also your playing style. If you want to, thank you for answering my questions. I'll let you do the show now. But no, you are more. This is what we're doing live for. So we really appreciate you stopping in, Darbo. But yeah, I think that's your playing style, how it comes through. And then to answer that question a little bit more, the 3 entry bankroll builders, which I love during the very big contest where you can win $100 in the rare tier situations, it goes down to 25 for the premium events. So it's rather disappointing. That's a massive drop off in return. $25 to me isn't nearly as much as $100 for the guys that you're putting in there. So in the premium or whatever the premier tier is, I don't tend to do those bankroll builders. Whereas this week, where we have a first class, business class, or economy, it is indeed a first class event with pretty much a first class field, but missing the 2 best players in the world, which really spices things up this week, John.
Yeah. I think from like a competitive, strategic builder and roster standpoint, this is one of the most fun weeks because it's like every week when Scheffler and Rahm play, like how do I not play Scheffler and Rahm? I got to figure out how to play Scheffler and Rahm, maybe get one more stud, and then I got to get balance to make this work, right? And like I guess for this you can get your optimal, but still you don't always want to just buy all the best cards. And even with that, like after Rahm and Scheffler, there's 10 guys that could be the next 3 in your roster, and which 3 are you going to go for, right? Now it feels like it's just wide open. Like I don't feel like there's a heavy favorite at all. There's probably close to 10 guys that all I feel pretty could win this tournament and feel good about. And then there's another 10 to 15 after that I think are very competitive. So for Rainmaker's purposes, I think it's really interesting because it doesn't really feel like a week where like going out and buying the optimal is like, there is no optimal. Right? There's 25 guys to choose from that could all be very competitive. So
yeah,
I think it makes it very interesting and very strategic from a strategy standpoint to win.
Because John Rahm and Scotty Scheffler are the world number. They basically 1A, 1B. You can probably call Rahm 1A Scotty 1B, but nobody else has been anywhere near as consistent and incredibly well playing, whatever that means, as those two guys. So now this week we've got number 3 and down. So that could be anyone. Anyone could fit into that situation. And the contest this week is essentially the highest contest you can get. So those bankroll builders will be $100 for the rare contests versus the 25 for the Mexico. It's really going to be, the contest payouts are going to be like the Masters. It's going to be like the RBC, all of that jazz. So it's going to be really nice to get your studs in some lineups this week. If you're looking
we're still in the range of talking context selection and pickers and things like that. A question was posed to me last week that I thought was really interesting for this. I'll give my take, but I'd love to hear yours. Let's hypothetically say you have 15 cards in this tournament to play with. You can make 3 lineups. Would you say that the optimal experience would be to make your best possible lineup, and then your second best possible lineup, and then your third best possible lineup, or to balance the 3 lineups the best you can?
I'm going to answer it based off the fact that I've got I think 100 cards right now, and I make my best lineups from the top. I want to cash. I think in that aspect, I want to take down the contest I'm in. So I want my best lineup to have my best. I'm not going to throw in a JV squad half. I'm going to throw in the varsity guys. Let's go. I want the ultimate upside. I'm not going to, unless you take those 3 guys and put them in a bankroll builder, then you spread them out nicely. Whereas as a single entry or 150 max, you're going to want to put those studs in there, your best cards. What do you think? How did you answer?
I think what I've been doing, depending on the contest, I can understand the other way, but what I've been doing is the same as you. I build the best possible lineup all the way down. So with the card, I build my best lineup, and then with the next cards left, I build my next best lineup, and the next with it, and then when I see my lineups are getting worse, I change the contest to a more, even for a pack or a cash contest, make it easier for those guys to be able to get in there.
Yeah.
And it's funny how it works. I had one lineup that was like one of my lower tier lineups. I didn't expect to do very well, and it had Eric Van Rooyen in it, and he had a good week. So that lineup ended up cashing, and it wasn't one I expected to. And so that even goes to show you that you should do that. Play them even when you don't expect it to be your top lineup, because if you put one guy in your captain, he has a good week, right? That lineup's going to be competitive.
Exactly. And it's interesting because the volatility of that lineup is absolutely going to be there once or twice in a year. 2 or 3 of those guys are just going to pop for you. And then nobody else in the field has that lineup, essentially. So then you're getting way different. But by playing the studs, playing the best optimal lineups all together, your consistency is going to be there too. So you could land up actually taking down a 150 max by putting in a crappy a JV lineup. Because if for 1 week Ram and Scotty miss the cut, that's, boom, you've eliminated a lot of people, and then you and I are hurting already for the majority of our player pool, but the rest of it's looking okay. So it's really interesting, and you can. That's the beauty of this, is there's so many ways to do it. Within the many ways to do it too, you can sell the cards, you can just do the contest entries, whatever, and then within those realms you can kind of fiddle. So really, really cool stuff. Yeah, I love this contest, and I've been getting DMs and Discord messages in our Rotoballer Discord. They're saying like, Rainmakers, man, it's bad news. It's very addicting, and it's a lot of fun. So I've enjoyed it. And yeah, let's get into our window seats, Joel, for this week. I'm going to pull up my model. I have the pricing for the minimum priced rares, and it won't even, there we go. Okay, sorry, 2 seconds. Yeah, I should have taken the time to do this beforehand, but here we are. So window seats, those are the seats that you want. I just flew Southwest, and they don't even assign you seats. So you have to like go and run to the back of the plane if you want a window seat, because you just get like a certain pen that you get put into like sheep. Flying is a nightmare. So as you can tell, I've almost basically got sick flying. So that's what's going on here. But I have got Patrick Cantley as the number 1 golfer in the short-term side of things for this week. And It's not necessarily to do with the power ranking. It's just to do with short-term prospects. But I'll do my model and get it figured out. So the number one guy in the model is Rory McIlroy this week. Obviously, course history, driving distance off the tee, all that jazz is spectacular, Joel. What are you doing with Rory this week?
Of my collection, which, in my own opinion, obviously I like my collection, the guys I went out and hunted for and picked, I'm pretty light on Rory overall. So I do like Rory this week. So I'm probably going to have to go get him to be competitive. I do have one rare Rory, which I will probably play in my elite contest. The problem is, just by the way the tournament's falling out, and while, like I said, I have a pretty loaded roster, I just don't have a loaded roster for this tournament. Like I have Scheffler and I have Rahm.
Yeah.
And those guys aren't playing, and those are the guys I'm usually going after. So I'm going to have to find who I'm going to feature if I'm playing elite as my elite cards and my captain, and I'll play my rare Rory in that lineup. The problem is I also don't have a Cantlay, so I got my work cut out for me this week.
You don't have a lot of Cantlays, Joel.
No. After
I've been preaching, Patrick Cantley's one of the top values in the market right now, and I do think he is. He's second in the model for me as the Wells Fargo model, and then as a short-term prospect, I think he's just churning out result after result. And I don't think you're actually going to have a tough time getting your hands on Cantlay. He's the same price as Xander right now, $90 a pop for the cheapest rare, which is out there. And you compare that to Tony Finau, who's sitting at $94 a pop. So would you, even though Tony just won in Mexico, he basically only had to really beat Jon Rahm. Okay. Whereas Cantley's just been top fiving, like he's been playing some solid golf. Whereas Tony's just been in these big elevated events where the prize money is the biggest. Tony really hasn't been showing up, so he's.
So what I see in what you're showing, I would agree with you that Cantlay's my preference over Tony. I think Tony played great last week. Not a knock on Tony, but Cantlay's been, I think, consistently better over the course. And Cantlay didn't play him last week. If Cantlay played, he might have been there also. So I agree. I think Tony's price is a little inflated coming off a win for sure, and as it probably should be in most weeks. But what I'm seeing looking at this board here is I think there's an unjustified drop. I think people are overrating Finau, Cantlay, Schauffele, and Rory. And I think it's a perfectly viable lineup to play something like, Cameron, Morikawa, Thomas, Day, and the amount less you have to spend to get those guys, which I don't think is as big as the talent gap between the top of them. So if I was new to this and I was going to build my lineup, my strategy would be just build a lineup of that tier of player, because to me, they're all pretty close to the same, and you can save a whole bunch of money by doing so.
Yeah, I'll filter it by the cheapest, the most expensive to the cheapest. And Rory's sitting at $140 a pop. I won a Rory rare, and I'm contemplating selling it because I think this is the week to get that value back from a contest winning card. Whereas I don't think I've got Rory. This is probably the highest his card value is going to be at a golf course that he's won at multiple times. I don't think he's playing his best golf this week. So I don't necessarily think he's going to come out as he's 8-1 on the betting market, which is kind of like, oof, but that is one way to also find out what kind of value you can get that week, is kind of comparing your card prices to the open markets betting odds or, DFS pricing. So I think I'm going to kind of dodge him. Going into the Masters, he was $209. But I won him, I think, at the Masters, which is the problem. So I think I'll be trying to get rid of him for somewhere in the 150s and see what I can do there. And I do agree, I think a great opportunity now is to get yourself some. Max Homa was ball striking it fantastically. And I think also something else we have to bear in mind, Joel, is go and check what people's schedules have been like. It was a crazy run up to the RBC Heritage, and then Max and Colin went and played the freaking Zurich as well. So they were playing far too many golf tournaments in a row, in my opinion. Now they've had at least a week off or 2 weeks off. Well, they got a few extra days because they missed the cut at the Zurich as well. And I think they'll be a little bit more refreshed, So there's basically a reset, on the gas tanks of these players. They're ramping up now for the PGA. I think they're going to be really trying to get into that mix. we'll see what can happen. I don't think you got to really react to how people have played recently, especially after the Masters in the last two events. There's a lot that could have gone wrong, and motivation levels were really low. So Max's price is one of the lowest it's been. I've got a lot of him. I can't be selling him. I was expecting to try and sell a few of him this week because he's won here before and won this tournament last year. Not to be. His price has gone down week by week. I think that's got to do with some fatigue. Are there any guys? Should we? Yeah, we can add that to our little.
I'll add on the Homa piece, and it's a hard thing to do. Like I'm like always saying this in my head to like talk myself into it. Try to never sell a guy on the downswing. Right? Like Homa is not playing his best golf, and it's like, yeah, of course, like he's not playing his best. Let me try and get rid of him. But the more you try to sell on the downswing, that's just a formula to lose money, right? We all know Max Homa has been playing good enough where he's going to play well again this year and have another good result. Like, wait for that and then sell. And I know the catch-22 of that is when he has that good result, then I want to keep him again. I want to keep playing him. It's like that's where you have to be disciplined in this and commit to your strategy of like maximizing profit on the card or maximize profit playing. You have to have a strategy to commit to it because you're always going to have that back and forth. So, selling when a guy's not playing well is just a recipe to lose money.
Absolutely. And I think another good someone that you still almost like on the upswing price-wise is Matt Fitzpatrick. His price went up a lot for the Zurich because he was playing with his brother and wasn't, studded field. I like how this golf course kind of suits his game, Joel. I really think he's, the Zurich, the Wells Fargo has typically been a low-scoring contest. Difficult golf course, long off the tee. What's Fitz pretty good at nowadays is that off the tee game is crazy, and he's really good around the green. So there's a lot to like about his game at this venue, and he's $56, and he's won a tournament, so he's going to be flirting with automatic entry to the Tour Championship in the top 30. And I think he's a little bit, a little low price, especially going into a week like this.
Yeah, I totally agree. He was playing as a top 10 player in the world last year. Came out this year. He had that neck injury. He played pretty poorly for a while with his neck injury. You have to assume coming off that victory at the RBC and then a pretty good showing at the Zurich, he seems to be getting healthy. And if we get healthy and a version of Fitzpatrick that we saw last year, that's another top 10 player. This is still way underpriced for him. Like I think he is still very much so a buy.
Absolutely. I think so too. And Jason Day. Jason Day is one of these guys at $47.99. I love how do you price it at $10.99 or 11 or whatever, or do you price it at a flat number?
I usually do a flat number. Sometimes if I think it's already low and I want to just beat the market, I'll go $1 below. So if it's already 50, I'll go 49. But I usually don't do the cents. No.
Yeah, no, this is so funny. You can tell like there's 199s and 47.99. It's just so funny seeing that. Jason Day's price at the Masters was $89, and now at the Wells Fargo, which I feel like he's got as good a track record as the Masters, essentially, he's $48. So he's almost dropped $40, and now the Masters was a disaster for him, and I don't think he's played since. So maybe we know that Jason Day's got some niggling health concerns, and the Masters could have been one tournament too many for him after a long, busy stretch. I like his chances here, and he's one of these guys that's lower than $50 that can easily find himself again inside the top 5. I don't know if he's going to win, and I said that about Tony Finau recently, but this is a different contest. So I think if you look at Jason Day's track record outside of the Masters, he's been playing great golf, Joel.
Yeah, I'm surprised that he has such a drastic drop from there. Yeah. It wasn't a great showing, but it was a storm. You can excuse, that for sure. And it wasn't like he's been burning you consistently since then. So it does seem like a good course fit this week. Value-wise, I think that number makes sense as a buy for a day as well.
I totally agree. And then, there's some Tom Kim and Tyrrell Hatton are two other guys that I want to talk about, as well as Keegan Bradley, actually. I think Keegan Bradley, if you take a look at Keegan Bradley's FedEx Cup points, he's like number 4 on the FedEx Cup points. So you're going to buy yourself a guy that's $29.99 on the rare market that's almost guaranteed to be in the Tour Championship top 30 because he's sitting fourth in Tour points, FedEx Cup points right now. Keegan Bradley, folks, like this is what we're dealing with here, and he's $30. So you're going to get yourself a cheap entry into those final things, and he's fourth in FedEx Cup points because he's been playing good golf. I think he's really underpriced too. So if we're talking about Keegan, I like him, and then Tyrrell Hatton from a course fit, long big drives and very long irons in. Tyrrell Hatton's one of the best long iron players in the world, man. And if you can get him for a casual 36.50 on the rare market for the cheapest card there, I don't mind him either. Any three of those guys that you're kind of eyeing out?
I agree with you. Another one, another one where the drop from the Masters to this week seems drastic, right? It seems like an overdrop. So I think there's a lot of value. Hatton is a player, and like this, Hatton's a great example of a guy where give me a field without Rahm and Scheffler and a bunch of Justin Thomas, Sung Jae Im, Jason Day, Sam Burns. Like he has upside. Like this is a field he's going to be valuable as he should be, but any given week he can compete in this field and win a tournament. So Hatton's the type of guy where you'll be different from the guys playing the optimal lineup because he won't be in the top 5, but he certainly can produce a better result than some of those guys.
Yeah, I love his chances this week, man. He just seems like if you tell me Tyrrell Hatton is $6 more than Seamus Power, like $6 more than Siwoo Kim, it's just I feel like he's in a different class. His upside is way better. Maybe he's a bit more volatile, but I think this golf course suits him so nicely. So I will be going out there and buying myself some Tyrrells this week. I think he's a great difference maker, and he's very affordable. You can get 3 Tyrrells for the price of a Xander Schauffele, basically. So, I think that's great value. Are there any other guys that are on the top of the market?
Point, and you actually just gave me this idea. If I was relatively new playing this week, and my options were build the optimal lineup of go back up, it's Xander, Cantlay, Rory,
and Tony. Yeah,
Tony, right? Build that lineup versus build 2 lineups of guys like Fitz, Thomas, Im. I'd rather have 2 lineups, 2 chances than build the one optimal. And I think I would actually think there's a better chance 2 lineups of guys within that second tier has a better chance of that lineup cashing than just the one optimal lineup. So to me, that's definitely the approach for this week.
Yeah. And I think we've been doing the optimal with Rahm and Scotty. And I think those two are like, we've discussed this already, but I think it's worth going back to is this week is wide open. Like you mentioned, there's so many guys out here that are absolute contenders at a very, very affordable price, So those are some guys that I'm looking to. Like Tommy Fleetwood. I feel like he suits this golf course really nicely too, $23.50. It's like that's super affordable for a Tommy Fleetwood. Then you got Gary over here sitting at $21, So I don't know if I'll be going back to Gary, but we'll see. So anyone that you're kind of looking to get off this week, Joel? Are there guys that you're kind of looking to dump that are on the up? Let's take a look and see if we can.
I think you actually gave me the idea, but I think you were right. I think selling Rory this week makes a lot of sense. I think I think people are overvaluing him as the top tier. I think getting that, if you can get that price that right now, which is like 30% above the market of any other card of Rory, I think it's a really great value for him. You can do what you did last week. Win your week before the week even starts. Make some money on the card.
Yeah.
And then I think even when you do that, go buy some cheaper cards get your Keegans, maybe a Hovland. Hovland's been a little pricey this week, but I can see Hovland having a good week. Get those guys and put another lineup out there and just save a little bit of money in getting that Rory value back.
Exactly. And I know that Rory's price has decreased a lot since the Masters, but I think the hype going into the Masters was just nuts. His price was way overvalued. So I do think, he's got the highest increase in price over the last 2 weeks since the Zurich, because obviously I never tracked this stuff while I was, drinking pina coladas in Panama City Beach. But I think, this is a good time. And Tony, what do you think about Tony? Do you think he's worth keeping? Or do you think this is a good time? Like I'm not disappointed I forgot to delist him. I got what I wanted for him, prior to Mexico, after Mexico, because he won. And, like unless you're going to be sliding him into like bankroller builder lineups, I don't think he's going to offer you that kind of top 10 upside that we've been looking for from Tony, which is the reason why we've been bitching about him over the last while. Just that upside hasn't been there until he gets out to Mexico, kind of thing.
I like Tony like as a player. Like I'm a fan of his. Like I want to root for him, things like that. And like that's the reason why it would be hard. It's kind of hard for me to sell him because I want to believe in him, but I think my mind tells me this. It's a smart time to sell, right? Get the upside swing, get the most value out of him. I don't think he's that much. His price is correct based on the other guys in this field. I think you can maximize profit by selling him after the win this week.
Yeah, because he's since the RBC, he's $14 more. Since the Zurich, he's $22 more. So, his price has gone up quite considerably. And, that's, I think, a good time to get rid of him now. And then potentially, if he has a bad week this week, go grab him again, for whatever reason that you might need him to. So, I don't know. The price will drop. It's interesting. What do you think it takes, like 1 week, or it seems like 2 or 3 weeks, and then it can really do some damage to a price of a player. But 1 week's not necessarily that much, unless we come from a week that was a very perfect week for that golfer, like with lots of course history and things like that.
I agree generally, right? But at the end of the day, this isn't like a market set by professionals or DraftKings. Like it's a market set by you and
Us.
I.
Yeah.
Some people go rogue. Somebody has a bad week. They get upset. They just try to get rid of them. They drop their price. So part of this game is also just keeping an eye out there. Like if something seems too good to be true in this format, it could be because it might just be someone's an idiot because they went out there and got upset with a golfer and maybe they made a mistake, and you can take advantage of that.
Absolutely. I think that's a great way to go about it. Let's take a look here and see who's dropped the most. And it seems this might be I might have typed something wrong for the Wyndham Clark thing here. So let's ignore that. I think that's probably sitting somewhere like 27. So we'll get him out of there. That was a typo on my part. I did this right beforehand, so sorry about that. But it looks like Colin Morikawa, Joel, has dropped $26 since the Zurich, which I think is also another, reason, because him and Max were partners and they were the outside of Cantley and Xander, they were the lead couple there. What are we doing with Colin at $66? Because I think we remember we're talking about him at the RBC at 69. He's still in that same range.
It's a tough one. I do think the value's there. Is this the perfect course fit? I don't think it's a terrible course fit. I don't think it's perfect. I don't think it's like this is the course to play Colin. I think he can go out there and have a great week and strike the heck out of the ball. So because of the drop and the talent caliber, I would say you can play him, but I don't think he's like a must-have.
Yeah. I think if there's a $90 guy that I'm going to go and buy right now, it's Patrick Cantley. I just think, I don't know what his price has gone all the way down to $90 for, when he was $125 going to the Masters, $100 going into RBC, $115 going into Zurich. Now he's $90 all of a sudden. And he's done nothing wrong. He's been playing great golf.
Well, part of it's like you said, is there's a 5-10% decrease just happening across the market. So that's a little bit of it, right? His price is just going down just because more cards are going out there. And then the second, I think the Zurich, his team was the top team though.
Yeah.
So his price may have had a small inflation to Zurich because they were the number one team to own. The RBC is like his place, right? It was him, he was the guy you wanted. So I think there was a little bit more, not that he did anything wrong. I just think going into those tournaments, he was the top guy to go get. This week, he's still one of them, but now it's more, there's probably 5 guys that are kind of in that same tier. And I think that's why the price is looking to get a little bit regulated.
Absolutely. I think so too. Justin Suh finds himself in here, seeing a massive drop from the Zurich, but I think who was matched up with, that was partner dependent. He was with Sahith, right?
Yes. That's right.
So that makes a lot of sense. So I need to figure out a way to kind of see an average decline or average increase in price since the Masters, because I've had enough weeks now that I can kind of do that with recording everything. So I think he's a bit of an outlier here. Matt Kuchar, I think, is a great buy low opportunity, not necessarily for this week, But going forward, there's a lot of golf courses that Matt Kuchar thrives at. He's had great course history at a lot of events, and his golf game is really doing great stuff. And he's sitting at 1850 right now, which is a casual $10 or so less than his average price over the last 3 events. So I think this is a great opportunity to buy low on Matt Kuchar. He's not going to give you what you're looking for at the Wells Fargo this week. But it's an opportunity to buy a $10 cheaper Matt Kuchar going into a tournament like a Byron Nelson, or who the hell knows. Like there's going to be events that I think he'll play well at, and his price is really kind of dipping here. Are there any guys like Sahith? I guess also that was also him and Justin Suh, you're seeing the same drop. But man, I'm a big Sahith fan, Joel, along with Cam Young. I think Cam Young this week too. Let's talk about Cam Young actually.
Yeah, I'm laughing because I literally was getting ready. It's like as soon as you passed over to me, the two guys I want to mention are Cam Young and Sahith. And you said it right before I could get there. So we're definitely aligned. Those are the next two guys I was going to mention. One, I think Cam Young, we've seen Cam Young's awesome at golf, right? Yeah. Regardless of the fact that he's also a really good course fit here, right? Like he's going to be able to bomb the ball. This should suit him really well. I think at $72, he's a great example of what we were saying of like, I think Cam Young has as much upside as Xander and Finau, and you get him for $20 less. Like, go ahead and give me that. So I love Cam Young this week. And Sahith too. Like Sahith, I mean, first of all, his price for what he brings you is still like almost they're disrespecting. Like he has so many top tens this year, and he's never missed. Like if he doesn't top 10, he does kind of implode a little bit, and usually he doesn't give you a good result. But like. It's not like he has 2 top 10s. He's got like 4 or 5, maybe even 6. Like he's so many top 10s that like it's now like it's not a fluke. Like he's good and he's gonna give you some really upside weeks. So at $45, like most of the time we're going for upside, right? We're not just playing as balanced as we can be, and Sahith is giving you upside.
Yeah, and $45. I've got him ranked as my 16th or yeah, short term wise, he's 16th, and you're going to tell me he's $45. That's ridiculous. So I love that pricing for him there. He's the same as Sam Burns, which Sam Burns is a big name, but Sam hasn't really been doing too much outside of winning the freaking WGC, so there's a bit of that going on. But yeah,
I think Cameron Burns is a good comparison. Right now, I'd rather have Sahith, but I think that they're the same tier type guys. Like both have really good upside, both can get a really good result. I think we've seen better results this season from Sahith, but of course, Burn has that one win. So
yeah, and I wonder, like Sahith is I use data golf a lot for my model and stuff, and Sahith is he's the best wedge player if you're looking at good shots from 150 to 100 yards. And I don't think we've seen a lot of those. So I don't think this week's going to be his week, so to speak. But also the RBC wasn't supposed to be his week either, so he doesn't necessarily suit too many courses. But I do think like the summer courses where we get a bit more birdie fest going, I think that's where he can shine because you're going to have a lot more wedges in your hands on those courses. Sahith is the best wedge player currently this year. And at $45, I think he's going to thrive in those kind of birdie fest situations, whereas these tougher conditions, but maybe he's just good at golf now in general, so at $45, I'm willing to take that ticket and take that train. So I love him and Cam Young, two Korn Ferry Tour guys from last year, which are playing great.
I'm totally with you. And yeah, I mean, you get to a point where you hit like a lower tier where I agree on paper, he's maybe not the perfect fit for this golf course, but he's just a better golfer than the other guys in his tier. So I think like, we don't build, I don't build my lineups based on, every guy being power hitter and long irons. And that's the only guys I'm playing, only pro, because like, that's not how it works out. Right. There's guys that, it's a mixed field. So, yes, if I'm going to be spending the most money on a golfer, I want him to be a good course fit probably, right, for my most expensive player. But after that, right, as I'm rounding it out, I just want the best golfers per dollar that I can get.
Absolutely. And I think somebody that's one of the more discounted best golfer per dollar is Kurt Kitayama, Joel. Got him sitting here at 36th in my long-term rankings. He's won a tournament. He's also inside that top top 10 on the FedEx Cup points list, which means that you got a very good shot of making it into the, the Tour Championship, which is ultimately the goal if you're looking to have the most value from a contest selection standpoint from your golfer. Good Kitayama is $21.70. So going into the Masters, he was $36.50. So he's seen quite a decrease in his price since then too. He also suits his golf course. He's one of the best long iron players in the field, and he's got some length off the tee, and another comp course to this venue is Bay Hill. So now did he putt out of his mind a little bit at Bay Hill? Yes. But I think his game still suits this kind of a golf course, and he's going to be in all these elevated events. He's going to be going deep into the playoffs, with the amount of points that he's accrued so far, and he's $21.
So here's I have a small issue with Kitayama here.
Okay.
Here's where I have trouble figuring out how to play him, because I do agree with you that the price is fair. 21 for him, fair price.
Mm-hmm.
I do question his upside here. Right? I do think he's outside of the top 25. So let's say he's around 30, 35, in that range is probably where I would put him. Where you have him?
Yeah.
If you don't already have him in your roster, which if you do, then he makes sense and you play him, that makes sense. If you're going out and buying a roster for this week, I think it makes more sense. You got to go up higher, because unless you're playing a safe tournament, which is fair, right? Maybe you're playing a cash, top whatever those top 150
bankroll builders, yeah,
bankroll builders. You're playing a bankroll builder, and you want to build an affordable lineup, then he makes sense here because he's affordable, and I do think he can get you like we said, in that 25 to 35 range. However, if you're going for upside in this tournament, I just think if you're going to go after people, you got to go up a little higher into that, one tier up to build. Even if you have to spend $10 to $20 more, I think it's worth it.
No, that's fair. And I think I was more coming at it from a card value. Buy it now, buy it next week, maybe then, whatever. I think he's a really good long-term play, so whether or not it makes sense this week, it is what it is. I think I'm gonna go and grab a few of him too, because I think I think his value is just, I don't know. I'm taking a stance on him, and I think he's still got a decent shot to make it into, some contention this week, but I don't know, I think he's also.
I think that makes sense. And there's certainly a world where he plays good this week and makes me eat my words, and he gets you a top, 15,
yeah.
And then his price goes up, to 25 or 30 in this field. So that's certainly a possibility. And stick to your guns if you're a believer, which I like Kurt Kitayama. If you're a believer in Kurt Kitayama, the long run of pre-all, $21 is certainly not a number to shy away from.
No, and it's also, we're not going to agree on everything, like Jesus. We do a pretty good job. Like compared to me and Spencer, you and I tend to agree on a lot of stuff. So it is good. Anything else you want to mention, Joel? I think we had one more question here from Darby. I don't even know if he's still in the thing. Wouldn't the best chance to win money to be put your premier lineup into an easier contest that doesn't have the thousands of entries in it? It's interesting, right? Because it's your return on investment. Like, what are you willing to take your Ferrari and race it against a bunch of Beetles kind of thing? Like, what is the payout going to be if you enter that lineup? I guess a good way to look at it would be, what did you pay for that lineup? And what would the total payout be for the rest of the year if you finished inside the top 10 each go round, or whatever? Pick a number that you feel is realistic to place in that contest, and see if you recoup your money on those golfers. Because sometimes you can, if you're putting them into a crappier contest, you might not necessarily get that money back.
I love the example you started to give. I thought it was great, right? Let's take that Ferrari example. You got a Ferrari, souped up one, you paid a lot of money for it. This is your best foot forward. There's 2 races tomorrow, right? One race is with all these other luxury cars, and the first prize is $100,000. The second race is with a bunch of guys in your area who have nice cars, a much more attainable win. First prize is $10,000. which race are you going to enter? There's a lot less likely chance you're going to win the first one with all the sexy cars, but it's for 100K, right? And so you have this nice lineup that you're feeling good about. Do you want to go against the tougher competition for the bigger prize, or do you want to go into the safer spot with a more likely win? Man, that's a personal preference thing, I think. I don't think there's a necessarily right or wrong answer. Because if you enter into the more winnable or more attainable contest and you kill it and you would have won the other contest, you're going to be upset that you didn't go to the bigger one, and vice versa. If you go to the big contest and you have a good week but you don't win at all, you'll be like, oh man, if I just put it in the other contest, I would have just made money. So it's whatever your appetite is how you got to play it.
Yeah, and I do think it also matters as to between the core and the rare contest, there's the amount of entries is ridiculous. Like the entries decrease quite exponentially as you go from core to rare to elite and then to legendary. There's like a handful of people contesting against each other. So it's really interesting because I think that there's a whole different strategy in the core tier versus at least even the rare, and the prices of the cards are like exorbitantly smaller, in the course versus the rare. So I really haven't, come up with a really good answer for that. But I think it is your own personal decision. It's also contest dependent. We don't know your situation, So if you got some cheap core cards that you think is a good lineup, then put them in the crappier contest, if it's still going to be worth your while to make that money back. So it's interesting.
I'm with you. Like I said, like in the elite, I don't necessarily, depending on the week, I might sometimes with a single entry, sometimes not. But in the core, my best lineup always goes in the single entry because there's so many more entrants to go into the big tournament, and the prop isn't like it's not like first place is 20K in core, so it's like it's not that big of a drop anyway. So in core, my best lineup is always single entry, whereas elite it depends on the week.
Absolutely, it's so fun. It's so fun, like you got all these different ways to do it, and it gives you so many options. You got these different cards, you got the different contests, you got the different strategies, you got all of that. But Joel, we're 57 minutes in. Any final parting words that you have for the people? I see Darbo's here saying Cam Champ and CT Pan are two filler cards. I don't mind a Cam Champ, but I think there's also like an instance where I guess that's a good topic to discuss before we get out of here is playing a Cam Champ in DFS versus playing a Cam Champ in Reignmaker, where the discount you're getting on the price provides value to that name, whereas Cam Champs. Now, do I have a Cam Champ outright at 400 to 1? Yes, but so maybe I should go get a Cam Champ card, but I think you can definitely try and figure out which golfers you want to play based off the value in DFS versus Reignmaker, because it's two different things. There's no salary cap in Reignmaker.
No, I think you said that very well, and that's exactly the point, right? Getting I haven't even looked. I don't even know what his price is yet in DFS this week, but let's assume Cam Champ is like 7K. He's probably somewhere in that range. Finding a 7K golfer that you're going to need to build a roster in DFS has, like you said, it has an additional value because you can't just play the optimal lineup in DFS. In this, you can. So there are still worlds where Cam Champ holds plenty of value, right? Like it's like if you're going to go fully optimal with 4 guys and then Cam Champ is the one other, it's definitely different. And if he gets you a top 10, then you're in great shape. 2, when you have maybe your third or fourth lineup, your second tier lineup, and you put Champ in your captain spot, and he gets you a top 20, then that second tier lineup can now cash. And maybe he won't win the whole thing, but whatever, it's fine. It makes you money. So there's different ways to think about how to do that. But you're right. Like Cam Champ is not going to be in what considered optimal, right, in this tournament because he's just a level below, and you don't need the salary down that you would in DFS.
Yeah, that's the thing. And also his value loses, like for a long-term perspective, he's only good on certain courses where like this course. So, but your resale value on Cam Champ is going to be minimal anyway, like I don't see price fluctuation on Cam Champ happening that much. So it's interesting. I do think, but that's all again, if you want to if you've built if you got 29 golfers and you need a 30th guy and you only want to spend $3 extra or whatever, go get yourself a Cam Champ. I think, I've got an outright on him. I've got an MJ Duffy outright at 400 to 1, which I think I'll be jumping on too. And then I've got Cam Young. So I'll be got a lot of Cam Young Rainmaker cards, which I'm looking forward to this week. So, Joel, thank you. Thank you so much for joining me for our 5th episode of the Rainmaker Runway podcast, which we are now doing every Tuesday night at somewhere between 7 and 8 Eastern, depending on our live events. But we'll find a nice solid time to keep doing this regularly and kind of try and stick to that. But thanks to everybody that tuned in today. We really appreciate your support. It's a nice pod that we're kind of growing. And I do want to say, I've done 50 plus podcasts on my personal, Back Nine Bets channel. And 2 of them, or I had 3 videos eclipse 100 views, which for me is a lot. It's the most I've ever got. And my channel is growing quite nicely, but 2 of them were my own personal ones, and then 1 of them was our RBC Heritage Rainmaker show. So the people love what we give them, and we really appreciate your support. So we'll keep on doing that for you guys. Joel, you are at Win Daily. We got the draft cast on Tuesday at 9 Eastern.
Yes, Tuesday night at 9 o'clock. Tune in tomorrow night. It'll be a fun draft, guys. I won't be there. So the gang will still be there. You still get Spencer, Sia, David. You get all our picks. I'm gonna be at the Nick game, the playoffs, big games. I'm gonna miss the draft cast, but it'll be a lot of fun. Tune in.
Yes, tune into that. Go over to the Model Maniac on Twitter. See all my Rotoballer stuff I'll be putting out there this evening and tomorrow and the rest of the week. And as always, rotoballer.com, your place to get everything that you need for 10% off. Use code MANIAC for the premium items, which are week-long or annual subscription. So we got all of that for you guys. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next week for the Byron Nelson, I believe. So we never know what's going on, but we'll be more prepared. So we'll catch you.